In our headlines on this Friday afternoon, June 30th. Rain marks a pause in the capital city but continues to pound in the southern parts of the country with flood and landslide warnings in place. Findings for the month of May show tangible improvements in Korea's industrial output, facility investment and private spending. The Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival, which marks its 27th edition this year, is on for an 11-day run starting this week. Capital Seoul is noting a lull in rainfall today, but downpours continue in the southern regions amid news of a tragic loss of a baby's life in a landslide in Yeongju city. My colleague Kim Do-yeon reports.
As South Korea is hit with days of rain, a baby was killed when her home was hit by a landslide in Yeongju City, Gyeongsangbuk-do province on early Friday morning. The city saw more than 230 millimeters of rain through Thursday night and Friday morning, and the soils had already been weakened by days of rain previously. The other occupants of the home hit by the landslide, 7 adults and 2 children, were able to escape. Gyeongsangbuk-do province saw a total of 90 emergency calls for help, mainly in Yeongju City, and rescuers helped save a total of 21 people from danger. The rain is expected to continue through Friday in most parts of the country, with heavy rain concentrated in the southern region. As of 11 a.m. Friday, a heavy rain warning is in place for Jeollanam-do province, parts of Jeollabuk-do, Gyeongsangbuk-do, Gyeongsangnam-do provinces, and Jeju Island. The Korea Meteorological Administration has forecast heavy rain for Jeollanam-do and Gyeongsangnam-do provinces through Friday into early Saturday from 50 to 100 millimeters. Jeju is expected to see 100 to 200 millimeters of rain, along with thunder and strong winds, continuing as late as early Saturday morning. The capital region is expected to see significantly less rain. While on Saturday, the country is expected to see some respite from the downpours, clouds are on their way from the south, and Jeju is expected to see monsoon rain again on Sunday. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
Findings for the month of May show tangible improvements in industrial output, facility investment and private spending, but growth in the chip sector remains slow. Our trade correspondent Shin Ha-young has the figures.
South Korea's overall industrial production, spending and investments all rose last month for the first time in 3 months. According to data released by Statistics Korea on Friday, industrial production in May rose 1.3% from the month before. Statistics Korea attributed the rise to growth in manufacturing production, particularly thanks to robust performance of the automobile and chip sector. However, the chip industry is still experiencing sluggish recovery. After posting a decline for the first 2 months of this year, semiconductor production saw remarkable growth of 30.9% in March. After that, growth slowed with a rise of 4.9% in April and 4.4% in May.
Chip production has been sluggish and inventory levels have remained high. The semiconductor industry is forecasted to see a slight improvement in the latter half of this year or even next year.
On the other hand, the service industry saw a drop of 0.1% due to a decline in the accommodation and restaurant sectors. Retail sales, a barometer for consumer demand, saw a rise of 0.4% as people spent more on durable goods such as home appliances. Facility investment also gained 3.5% on month thanks to more investment in the machinery and aircraft sectors. Despite the latest figures, economic recovery overall still remains modest due to weak growth. Shin Ha-young, Arirang News.
In other news, for the first time in almost a decade, Seoul and Tokyo have agreed to put back in place their currency swap pact worth $10 billion this time around. Our Moon Hae-ryun reports.
South Korea and Japan are resuming their currency swap pact after an 8-year pause. Finance Minister Chu Kyung-ho and his Japanese counterpart Junichi Suzuki held a bilateral meeting in Tokyo on Thursday to finalize the details. The amount set is $10 billion, relatively small in comparison to the $70 billion in 2011, before relations between the neighbors soured in 2015. However, experts say that this amount isn't set in stone.
It's likely that they will continue to increase the amount as economic cooperation between the two countries continues to strengthen in the future.
This comes amid improving diplomatic relations and with progress in other areas, such as with the restoration of both countries to each other's trade whitelists. Currency swaps between countries are typically agreements where currencies are lent for a certain period in times of emergency or to boost trade. This particular example secures dollar liquidity for South Korea, as Japan is set to provide US dollars. While there is no great need for South Korea to secure dollar liquidity, as its foreign reserves rank 9th in the world with a total of $421 billion as of May, this deal holds significance as it strengthens its financial safety net.
It also holds a lot of meaning as it marks a resumption of monetary cooperation between South Korea and Japan after its expiration back in 2015.
With this latest agreement reached between Seoul and Tokyo, watchers expect this to be a starting point for economic cooperation to flourish between not only South Korea and Japan, but also with the United States. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, the American economy has reportedly displayed remarkable resilience in the face of high interest rates. According to the U.S. Commerce Department on Thursday, the economy expanded at a 2% annual pace in the first quarter of this year as consumers continue to keep their purse strings open. While the latest finding is a tangible improvement from the department's earlier estimate of a 1.3% annual rate, it is nonetheless a slowdown from the two previous quarters amid relentless hikes in rates by the Federal Reserve to stem inflation. President Seoul-Gyeonggi has reaffirmed intentions to lay down the tracks literally to shorten the commute time across the Greater Seoul area to about half an hour. At the opening ceremony of the Daegok-Sosa double-track railway on this Friday, President Yoon vowed commitment to expanding the rail network in the western part of the metropolitan area, which also covers Gyeonggi-do province. Once officially open on Saturday, the Daegok-Sosa line will connect Bucheon and Goyang cities through northern Seoul, allowing commuters access to central Seoul in 30 minutes with just one transfer. Also, come early 2025, the Seohae and Shin-Ansan lines will be completed, connecting the metropolitan area to Chungcheongnam-do province. Unification Minister nominee Kim Young-ho has pledged policies that conform to inter-Korean ties. Speaking to reporters on this Friday, Kim underscored the importance of consistency to ensure effective policies, adding that he would take into account earlier cross-border agreements as well. He also shed light on Pyongyang's human rights abuses, claiming that Seoul needs to do more to ease the plight of people there. Pundits believe Kim's appointment may serve to further pressure North Korea amid tensions over its hostile military ambitions. Over in the U.S., public and private American universities are now barred from taking into account race as a factor in their admission process. Our Yeongju tells us what this means.
The U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday ruled 6-3 that U.S. colleges and universities can no longer apply affirmative action as a specific basis for granting admission, meaning race can no longer be taken into consideration in tertiary level applications. The landmark decision reverses a decades-long precedent that benefited Black and Latino students when entering higher education. According to Chief Justice John Roberts, Harvard and University of North Carolina admissions programs violated the Equal Protection Clause as they failed to give measurable objectives to justify the use of race in admissions. He added that affirmative action programs in the two schools unavoidably employ race in a negative manner, involve racial stereotyping, and lack meaningful endpoints. While the majority opinion by the U.S. Supreme Court does not formally overturn affirmative action in higher education, it will make it virtually impossible for colleges and universities to take race into account for admissions from now on. Meanwhile, President Joe Biden criticized the latest decision by the Supreme Court, saying the decision walked away from decades of precedent, adding he strongly disagreed with the decision.
Today, the court once again walked away from decades of precedent and as the dissent has made clear. The dissent states in today's decision, quote, rolls back decades of precedent and momentous progress, end of quote. I agree with that statement from the dissent.
Despite the latest decision by the top court, Biden urged schools to continue considering racial adversity for applicants. He says discrimination still exists in America and that the Supreme Court ruling was a severe disappointment. The affirmative action ruling is the latest in recent reversals by the Supreme Court, including a ruling on abortion rights. 이승재, Arirang News.
In Bucheon, here in Korea, curtains went up on the city's annual International Film Festival Thursday night, and our Lee Soo-jin was there for its opening. To take a look.
The rainy weather couldn't dampen the spirits at this year's Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival. The festival kicked off on Thursday evening, continuing its slogan of Stay Strange from 2021, which reflects its goal of promoting alternative films and indie actors. It also added another slogan this year, Cinema Plus.
The Korean film industry has faced many difficulties during the past 3 years because of the pandemic. The slogan Cinema Plus represents the need for the movie industry to evolve to overcome these difficulties.
The Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival is one of the largest genre film festivals in Asia. It features 262 films from 51 countries this year. And this year's festival also coincided with Bucheon's 50th anniversary of gaining city status. The festival brought in attendees from around the globe.
And we have a world premiere for our short film, so it's the first time we're coming in contact with people outside of our small pool in Austria.
Many stars, such as legendary South Korean actors An Sung-gi, Kim Sung-gyun, and Yang Dong-gun, graced the red carpet for the opening night. The opening film this year was the tragic comedy horror film Beau is Afraid, written and directed by Ari Aster, the renowned filmmaker behind Midsommar.
It's an honor to be here. I love Korean cinema, and so it's a thrill to be here in Korea presenting this film and to be opening this festival.
The festival is also known for highlighting the career of one actor each year that represents Korean cinema, and this year it was none other than Choi Min-sik, known for his cult classic films such as Old Boy. The film festival, which will be held until July 9th, will continue to hold screenings of films from various genres, as well as master classes led by world-renowned directors. Lee Soo-jin, Arirang News.
3 South Korean musicians have been granted the highest honors at the International Tchaikovsky Competition. The competition, held once every 4 years, was hosted in the Russian cities of Moscow and St. Petersburg this year from June 20th to the 29th. Kim Ki-hee is bringing home the gold for violin, Lee Young-un the gold for cello, and Son Ji-hoon also the gold for voice. Now, Kim and Lee are the first Koreans to have won in the instrumental categories. Featuring 6 categories. For musicians aged between 16 and 32 years, the competition is considered one of the most respected in the world of music since its founding in 1958. But its reputation in recent times appears to have been tarnished, with fewer foreign participants amid Kremlin's invasion of Ukraine. In the football field, over in Thailand, Team Korea has advanced to the finals of the Under-17 Asian Cup. During their semi-final match on Thursday, the teenage Taeguk Warriors beat Uzbekistan 1-0 when a free kick by Peginu found the net. The Korean squad is now scheduled to play Japan on Sunday at 9 p.m. Korea Standard Time. The upcoming match marks the first face-off between the two countries in an Under-17 Asian Cup final. South Korea, for its part, previously won the tournament in the years 1986 and 2002. As part of broader efforts to spend less and save more amid the high cost of living today, the young are reportedly opting for old-school budgeting options such as cash stuffing. Our business correspondent Arirang files this report.
The world is coping with sky-high inflation. Over a third of all U.S. households, 38.5% in fact, have been finding it hard to pay their bills. Data released by the U.S. Census Bureau show that the equivalent of 89.1 million have said that they have been struggling between late April and early May. That's up from 34.4% a year ago. The UK too is suffering from a heavy consumer price rise, with the inflation rate staying at 10%. Food prices specifically increased by almost 20%, the highest rate in more than 45 years. So younger people are tightening their purse strings, and cash seems to be making a comeback among millennials and Gen Zs. There is a new trend called cash stuffing, where people are only using cash instead of credit or debit cards. The stuffing part refers to cash being put into envelopes. You divide the cash between envelopes for each budget category, such as groceries, transport, and hobbies, and only spend what's in them. The hashtag cash stuffing has been trending on social media and has now become a challenge for the younger generation. Some videos on TikTok have over 930 million views. It's quite noticeable how Gen Zs who are used to mobile devices and digital payment methods are going back to using cash.
I try my best to use cash because it's hard to know how much you've spent when using a card.
It's what differentiates you from other people, as it's quite different from common spending habits these days. That could be your own strategy for your social media account.
Young Koreans too are using anonymous group chats to share their budgeting tips. They also send each other their daily spending and evaluate each other's budgeting abilities. They say it motivates them more and feels more like a challenge.
Now it's important to know that these age brackets pursue joy in every activity. They don't have a sufficient amount of money, but they don't see this negatively or feel discouraged by it. Instead, they find fun ways to save money with their friends.
This, meanwhile, is quite gloomy news for the government, which is actually trying to boost individual spending. The government plans to give out more discount coupons for domestic travel and gift cards to be used at traditional markets in order to recover consumer spending. Lee Hyun, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. In Russia, sources quoted by the Associated Press say that a top general has been arrested following the uprising by the mercenary Wagner Group, which was aborted on Saturday. The person reportedly detained is General Sergei Surovikin, the deputy commander of the Russian group of forces fighting in Ukraine. It's not known what charges he faces or where he has been detained. But the military leader is reported to have known about Wagner's plans to stage the insurrection days before it happened. He is also said to have long-time links to Yevgeny Prigozhin, leader of the mercenary group. Surovikin, known as General Armageddon for his brutal tactics, initially led strikes on Ukraine's infrastructure, but was later replaced by General Valery Gerasimov. Gerasimov's whereabouts is also unknown, as he has disappeared from public view since the aborted mutiny. Moving on to health, the World Health Organization's Cancer Research Division appears set to list one of the world's most widely used artificial sweeteners as a possible carcinogen. A report by Reuters news agency says that aspartame will be added under the designation possibly carcinogenic to humans, as there is some limited evidence linking aspartame to cancer. The title is the least serious categorization in the WHO's three-tier carcinogen warning system. The WHO has been previously criticized for publishing confusing assessments and creating panic over ingredients that can be difficult to avoid. Aspartame is found in products such as diet sodas, bottled teas, and chewing gum. Now, turning our attention upwards, Virgin Galactic joined the space tourism industry on Thursday after successfully launching its first commercial flight. Taking to the skies above the New Mexico desert in a spacecraft called Unity, the company's first paid voyage carried 3 Italians who wished to conduct experiments in zero-gravity conditions. The achievement is nearly 20 years in the making, since founder Sir Richard Branson started the company in 2004. He is now aiming to send the roughly 800 people who have already bought tickets into space. In contrast to competitors SpaceX and Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic sends its passengers into space by launching its spacecraft from beneath the wing of a larger plane whilst in the air. And finally, for the first time, astronomers have heard the low-frequency humming of large gravitational waves that are moving through the universe. They managed the feat by measuring light across a galaxy-wide array of flashing pulsar stars, which are the spinning remains of exploded stars. The discovery, which was announced on Wednesday, took a decade, requiring collaboration between researchers based all over the world. It's theorized that the waves started soon after the Big Bang and are emerging from pairs of supermassive black holes that weigh as much as billion suns and are spread throughout the universe. The long-awaited find was made difficult by the waves' faint nature and the fact that they vibrate at timescales that are decades long. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Rain should go away by the evening commute in central regions, but certain parts of the country are being soaked with intense rainfall, with 30 to 60 millimeters of an hour of rain to pound down through tomorrow dawn. And until tomorrow, Jeju could see more than 250 millimeters, and 전라남도 and 경상남도 province to see 150 millimeters of downpours. Heavy rain alerts remain in place for parts of 전라도 and 경상도 provinces and Jeju Island. So authorities have warned of the risk of flash floods and landslides. Meanwhile, afternoon highs in central areas should go up 3 to 5 degrees higher than yesterday, hovering in the low 30s this afternoon, similar to slightly lower in the south along with light showers. Other regions will get a break from monsoon rain by Saturday afternoon, but sweaty temperatures set in and will stay day and night, with a tropical night expected. Then the monsoonal front returns on Sunday to Jeju Island. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That ends our Friday afternoon newscast, but we have our panel session coming up next, so do stay with us. Thank you for now.
사랑 표현법을 담은 곡입니다.
동시에 느낄 수 있는 곡인데요.
내 목소린 널 입술.
뮤직.
Contour the world, simply contour. India, the United Kingdom, New Zealand. Woo!
I'm excited. You excited?
Of course.
Yeah.
Music, start.
춥지 않은가요? 처음 태어난 이별에서 사는 우리 손잡아요.
Curtains are up for the Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival this week, and the annual event, which marks its 27th edition this year, is on for an 11-day run. So what foreign films are looking to gain much public attention? And what Korean films are showing on screens at this year's event? Also, what are the broader implications of this year's slogan? Welcome to Issues and Insiders. The Pocheon International Fantastic Film Festival is reportedly the largest genre film festival in Asia that features horror, thriller and sci-fi movies, among others. For more on this annual event, I have Professor Jae So at the Seoul Institute of the Arts live on the line. Professor So, it's been a while. Welcome back.
Well, nice to be back.
I also have Pierce Conran with us. Pierce, it's good to speak with you again.
Good afternoon, Sunny. Thanks for having me again.
Right, Professor, so let's begin then with some background information about the Pocheon International Film Festival. How did it start, Professor, and how does it differ from existing film festivals?
Well, first of all, it's my favorite film festival because I showed my feature film there in 2012 with a film called Let Me Out. And it was inaugurated in 1997. And it focuses basically on genre of movies, basically South Korean and international horror, thriller, mystery, fantasy films. And particular attention is paid to Asian cinema from East Asia and Southeast Asia. And it's featured in the city of Bucheon, which there's an animation character named Dooley, who's a citizen of that. And masterworks by, directors like Peter Jackson or Christopher Nolan, Darren Aronofsky, Guillermo del Toro, Chang Jun-an, or Naongjin have been discovered and introduced at PFAN. So it's a festival that basically celebrates all kinds of genre movies, and basically it's like 262 films this year from 51 countries for 11 days. So really looking forward to it, and of all the festivals, I think it's just the most fun.
Right, I see. And Pierce, I hear this year's event has a fresh slogan aimed at breathing perhaps new life into the local cinema industry. Could you tell us a bit more about that?
Sure. So this year's slogan is Cinema Plus. And I think that is, trying to reflect how the industry has been changing. There are a lot of, sea currents in the industry now where streaming has become so important. Festivals, are now increasingly including streaming content in their programs. Busan has a competition for that, and Toronto, even things like at the Cannes Film Festival this year, they had the new HBO series, The Idol, starring Blackpink's Jennie. And so, but for beefy BFAN, Cinema Plus isn't just about having TV content. It's also about embracing the other aspects of Korean culture that really kind of that are brought into screen content. So things like webtoons and K-pop. There's a whole section on K-pop films this year, which includes films that are like concert documentaries, but also just films that kind of take place against K-pop background. There's also a thing called the Gwaedam campus, because Gwaedam are like Korean folk stories, ghost stories, and so there's a way of it's a campus trying to figure out how to bring new voices who write these ghost stories and kind of integrate them into screen content. There's also another slogan, which is "Stay Strange," which is kind of the general slogan of BFAN, and that's the slogan I love because it's about these kind of films that are a bit out there. It's about embracing outsiders and embracing everyone's colors. So I'm glad they're still sticking with that as their main slogan.
Right. And Professor So, before we delve further into the films on screen in Pocheon this year, how do you, Professor So, explain the perhaps slowing foot traffic to local theatres in recent times?
Well, basically, we had COVID. That was a major disruptor for, I think, all entertainment because people were afraid to, get, disease from going to see a movie. So we finished the pandemic, fortunately, and people started coming back. But I think there was a combination of both the theater tickets going up in price. They doubled in price before COVID. And so it kind of prevented a lot of people from wanting to just go. The popular movies like The Roundup or Top Gun or Avatar have done really well, but other Korean films have done really badly this year and last year. And I think the reason for that is also the streaming services like Netflix and Disney Plus and Wave. People are used to seeing movies now on these OTT platforms. And, basically, the price of a subscription is much cheaper than the price of a ticket. So I think for a movie ticket. So I think a lot of people are kind of stuck in their habit of just staying home to watch movies. And but the thing is, it's happening all over the world. It's not just Korea. So, I worry a little bit, but I do feel like domestically for Korea, movie theaters will once again have theaters flock to it because we have a very small country, for one thing, and also for younger people, I think going to a movie theater still, and then shopping, hanging out with friends is still a major hobby of a lot of people. So eventually, I think people will snap out of the thing. But I do think a lot of people are afraid that it won't be at the same level as it was before the pandemic.
Right. And Pierce, do you share this outlook? Do you envision a revival of cinemas going forward?
Well, Professor, I agree with your points. Particularly, for me, the most concerning, I think, especially for the Korean market, is the rising ticket prices, where because that happened, unfortunately, during the pandemic, while the cinemas were empty and the exhibition chains decided to increase their prices to kind of try and shore up their losses. What they did that while no one was going to the cinema anyway, and they increased the prices 3 times in the course of the year, essentially raising them like over 30%. And so by the time that people were comfortable going to the cinema again, it had become an extremely expensive thing to do. And as you say, streaming is very competitive, high quality content available to click of a button for a pretty nominal price every month. So, what do we do about that? Can we bring the ticket prices down again? It seems unlikely the exhibitors will do that, or do we just have to wait for people to get used to those high prices? So wait for like the rest of inflation to kind of match up with what the price of the ticket is now. But so we don't know. I remain somewhat bullish that I do think people will come back to the cinema. As the Professor, you say, it might not be quite to the same level that we were used to before, and it might be gathered around fewer films. So yeah, things like Roundup, sequels are doing very, very well. Original films are struggling quite a bit. So this summer will be a very big test. At the end of July, recent one comes back with Smugglers, and there will be 4 big films coming out in the course of 3 weeks around the summer holidays.
Right.
Last summer that didn't do very well. This summer, hopefully, we'll see an improvement.
Right, hopefully. I keep my fingers crossed. Professor, so back in Bucheon, Netflix Korean drama DP starring Chung Hae-in has secured an award at this year's event. Could you tell us a bit about the award and also about the drama itself?
Well, the drama is called DP, and apparently it means deserter in pursuit. And basically, if anybody's been to the army, you do have these soldiers that go AWOL, and so you have to go catch them. that's what this series is about. It's really exciting because it showcases two actors, Chung In and Kyu-Gyeon, who are just fantastic performers in the piece. And I think what's interesting about it winning the Series Film Award at Bucheon this year is that it's funny because it's a Netflix show series that you see on a streaming platform. It's not in the theaters, playing in a film festival, but it seems that's the trend these days. Not only Bucheon, but Busan and Jeonju are also showcasing works on different OTT platforms. Last year's winner for the PFUN Series Film Award was Squid Game, of course. So they honor drama series that sort of do it. But what's interesting about both Squid Game and DP was it was directed by film directors. So DP was directed by Han Jun-hee, and he directed Chinatown. So he's kind of a really up-and-coming film director. And of course, because of a lot of films not going to the theaters these days, a lot of film directors are basically making movies for the streaming services. And I think DP is a terrific series because the first one sort of concentrated on military bullying inside for all the recruits and things like that. So it really showed sort of what it's like to be drafted into the military in Korea, and the two characters played by the really good actors really showcased what the reality of the situation and kind of showed it in a quirky way. So I think season 2, which starts pretty soon, is going to be like another kind of series of things about the Korean military and life in Korea.
Right, I see. Good to know. Piers, tell us a bit more about the films at the Bucheon Film Festival that are going to start the event and, of course, end it as well.
So yesterday was the opening, indeed, and the film that opened the festival is Beau is Afraid, which is the third film by Ari Aster, who's very well known for his so-called elevated horror films like Hereditary and Midsommar. Beau is Afraid, which actually comes out in theaters next week, July 5th, here in Korea. It stars Joaquin Phoenix as a rather neurotic man who has to go and travel to go and see his mother, and things don't go very well. And I wouldn't want to say much more because it'll really spoil the surprise. It's a very, very special film. I was lucky to go and see it yesterday. We had a special masterclass event with director Aster, so it's a very unique, special film that I think it's been very polarizing. Some people really don't like it, some people love it, but it's a great film to watch and kind of hash out and discuss with friends. Closing the film next week will be Sana, which is the new film from Japanese director Takashi Shimizu. Director Shimizu is known for J-horror films, Japanese horror films like the Grudge series, the Ju-on films. And this new film is about a staff member at a radio station who stumbles upon a forgotten cassette tape. And of course, people start listening to that, and it's a bit like The Ring, where rather than a videotape, it's a cassette tape. So obviously a horror film there. So curious to see how that does. That is the world premiere here in Bucheon.
Right, I see. And Professor, so what more can you tell us about the Korean films that are competing for the main prize this year?
Yes, the 10 films which are selected for the Korean features, which is Korean Fantastic section, they're kind of interesting films. I want to introduce 3 films. One is by director Ha Myung-mi, and it's called Her Hobby. It's a story about 2 women that journey into sort of a weird countryside where they have to confront forces that are trying to harm them. And it's based on the novel by author Seo Mi-ae. And the actresses that come out in the movie, Kim Hae-na and Jung In-seo, are really terrific in the film, so I really highly recommend watching this. And another film that I want to recommend is a movie called Abroad, directed by Giovanni Fumi. So this is a kind of not a non-Korean director who directed a main character who's played by a Korean person. It's a boyfriend who can barely speak English, who embarks on an overseas trip with his girlfriend, and basically all these things happen to him. So this was kind of an interesting film because it was basically what a Korean person would be doing in a foreign country. And then another film I'd like to recommend is a movie called Unknown Narrative, Skyrocket Junipers Under the Crescent. It's a very long title. It's directed by Yang Gun-young, and it's basically another kind of feminist take on a lot of things that are happening to people, artists and stuntmen that are experiencing life. And it's kind of a crazy non-narrative film with a lot of really interesting visuals. And what's interesting about it is the director, Yang Gun-young, is actually a cinematographer who studied at Korean Film Academy. And so now she's becoming a director. So all these films that we watched, 10 of them, are sort of like kind of a new take because last 4 years has been really hard with the pandemic. So all of these films sort of confront what's happening with life after COVID and how hard it is for people to make films in the Korean film industry right now as well.
Right, indeed. And Pierce, what can you share with us about the foreign films that are in competition this year?
Well, so there are 10 films in the signature Bucheon Choice Competition. I haven't had a chance to see any of them yet, but I've heard good things about several of them. And the ones I'm most eager to check out are Restore Point, which is the debut film of Czech filmmaker Robert Glaus. This is it's a neo-noir filled with urban decay, and it focuses on a dangerous new technology that when it becomes a reality. It's set in Prague in 2041, and there are murder victims are able to be brought back from the grave through an experimental tech known as Restore Points. And then there's a female detective investigating, and of course a conspiracy starts to unfurl from there. Another one that caught my eye is Tiger Stripes from the Malaysian director Amanda Nel. And this is about a 12-year-old girl who starts to undergo a difficult physical transformation, and she gets bullied as a result, and strange things happen from there. I love this genre of young women having kind of freaky horror transformations, because they're always very good metaphors. And so those films like that include When Animals Dream or Raw, the Swiss film Blew My Mind, or the Palme d'Or winner, Titan. So that's a really good genre. This film sounds quite good, so I'm very eager to check it out.
Right. Professor, so speaking about competition, what are some of the main factors considered, that is, when judging a film for an award?
Well, I haven't really judged the competition for Pocheon, but generally other festivals that I've done, judging on is, we look at story, how original it is, and basically what the filmmaker wants to say to the audience is something that we really look at. And for Pocheon, because it's a fantastic film festival where they really showcase a lot of genre films, basically genre movies are like horror films and things like that, that has a history in its canon of different conventions that they use in the film. So, we want to see like original works that have a new twist on what horror can be. Also, we like works by a lot of feminist directors that kind of come up with a new way to do it. And, basically we have fantasy, science fiction, all these different genres, but the main thing is how the story is well put together, how original the story is, and also like basically how the actors and the rest of the cast really kind of showcase the story itself. But to me, like any festival, you're trying to pick the best works, but of course all the judges that make the judges have different aesthetic principles, so you have to kind of sometimes compromise. But Pierce has probably done some judging himself, but there's a lot of arguments between judges about what films to be picked and things like that. So yeah, it's basically out of competition and in competition, but there's a lot of judging going on, and these standards are pretty strict.
Right, and Pierce, as Professor So mentioned, I believe you were previously a member of the jury for the Bucheon Film Festival. What was the basis of your assessment of films back then?
Well, as Professor So you say, it's definitely originality. You're looking at story, you're looking at thematic clarity. Yeah, in Bucheon, of course, you're looking at how people are using kind of, trying to say familiar things with through like unique story devices. I think you look at these films and you want them to kind of, look good and be well made. The technical quality can be important to a degree, but it's very important to approach films kind of on their own terms. Not everyone has the same resources when you're making, indie films. So it's more about seeing, how much ingenuity is displayed with directors with limited resources. You get to that's a lot of when you're watching indie films at festivals. I think it's important to have that thematic clarity as well, where you can see like a film with a good gimmick, but if someone has a good idea and carries it through all the way to the end, that's a sign of a good director, and you want to kind of see where they'll go next. In Bucheon, of course, the competition films are generally first or second films. These are new works, and you kind of want to identify who are the directors that are kind of go on to make interesting things, because we don't give the award to the producer or the production company. It goes to the director. So it's important to kind of see, has the director realized their vision and where they're going to go next.
Right, I see. Professor, so you earlier mentioned movies like Her Hobby and Abroad. If you were to pick one film from this year's lineup at Pocheon, what would it be?
That's a really hard question. I think out of so many films, it's really hard to say one is the best of all of them. But I can make a couple of suggestions. Basically, I really liked Bad Education by director Kai Kuo. It's a Taiwanese film about youth. And what I liked about it was there are a lot of sort of youth films in Korea and Asia, but this one had sort of like what it's really like to be in Taiwan. It was kind of like the fear of violence, things that a lot of countries are now going through themselves. So I thought this movie was pretty interesting. And I agree with what Pierce also suggested with the Czech film, Restore Point. I didn't really see the film in its entirety, but what I've seen is that for a very low budget, it looked like an amazing Hollywood CG-oriented movie. So it's the near future of like 2041 and what life is like that. But it was, what to me was interesting was how the film captured sort of what the future would be like. And it's the Czech film industry, sort of Eastern Europeans are really good at making films. So I saw their skill set on that. I also want to give out a shout out to sort of the shorts in the festival, which is there's a couple of short sections, which is Bucheon Choice Shorts and also Korean Fantastic Shorts and XL. So there's like 71 shorts playing at this festival. But there's a short by Harry Holland called Last Call, and that's the brother of Tom Holland, the Spider-Man, and he's starring in that one. So I would say try to go watch a lot of these shorts.
Right, indeed. And Pierce, like Professor So mentioned, you seemed quite excited about the debut feature by that Czech filmmaker. I actually read about this from your recent article on the Pocheon Film Festival. Could you tell us a bit more?
Well, I think we've already kind of covered it quite a bit, but yeah, it's an exciting debut feature. This guy looks like Robert Laws, looks like an interesting voice to check out. So I'm curious to see how he's brought this kind of very creative vision to the screen. But if I could point out some other films, I would back up, Professor, some of your picks. I think Her Hobby is very interesting. People who like The Devils, you know, if they remember that great revenge film from 10 or 12 years ago. It's a bit like that, but from more of a feminist angle, and so that's I think a very interesting one. I hope it'll break out. And the film that isn't brand new here, because it already screened in theaters a few months ago, but it's getting a special screening in Bucheon, is Killing Romance, which is a film I can't stop talking about. I absolutely adore this absurd kind of karaoke musical starring Lee Sung-gyun and Lee Ha-ni and Gong Myung from director Lee Won-suk, who's actually here in Bucheon as one of the jury members in the main competition. It's a wonderful film. This is the first time it's screened in Korea with English subtitles, so people who haven't had a chance to see it here can now. And the film is screening a lot of festivals internationally, and I hope it'll be embraced as warmly. Well, I hope people like it as much as I did.
Right, Killing Romance. I want to watch that one as well. Professor So, at the start of this session, you talked about how you debuted at the Pocheon International Fantastic Film Festival with your movie, Let Me Out. I love the title, by the way. Now, I know this is probably going to be a subjective response from your part, but what was the response to your debut film back then?
Oh, it was phenomenal. Like, basically, it was the first time I got to show my movie to audiences here in Korea. I had already gone to a festival in Dallas and a festival in Argentina at that point. But what I like about Pocheon is that the audiences truly love the films, and they're really engaging. They asked a lot of personal questions too, and because I made a movie about basically a film student, and that's what I do is I teach them. So it was really exciting. But what's really nice about any film festival as a filmmaker is that you get to sort of test out what your film's going to be like. You know, when it's finally released in the theaters. And so it's the first sort of meeting the audience situation, basically really upfront. So that's what I really liked about it.
Right, I see. Pierce, you mentioned Gwedam campus, right? My colleague Lee Soo-jin was at the opening event of the Pocheon International Film Festival, and she spoke about how a lot of up and rising directors from Taiwan and Indonesia were showing great interest in the Korean cinema industry. How do you explain the interest, very briefly speaking?
Well, I mean, everyone has been is very attracted to Korean content, and what's great about what people love about Korean stories are how global they can be. We're talking about very common issues dealing, you know, the social inequality in society, and Korean writers kind of find exciting ways to kind of bring these global stories to the screen. And beyond, being fans, I think people from Southeast Asia and all the rest of the world are trying to kind of figure out how they can kind of bring that kind of style to their markets as well. So naturally, you can expect more interest like that.
Right, I see. All right, Pierce, as always, thank you so much for your time and your thoughts. And Professor So, thank you so much for your insights.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Right, well, for those of you thinking about what to do this weekend, the Bucheon International Fantastic Film Festival may be one option. Thank you for watching. Have a good weekend.
Arirang TV is conducting a quality and satisfaction evaluation to enhance the broadcast service for viewers worldwide. Please visit our website at www.